My name is Cassandra, I'm 35, and last month I finally paid off my house after 12 years of relentless sacrifice and hard work. What should have been the most liberating day of my life instead became the beginning of a nightmare. I was literally opening champagne when my brother Ryan called with news that blindsided me. I never imagined my proudest financial achievement would become the catalyst for betrayal from the people I thought I could trust most. Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear more real-life stories about family dynamics gone wrong. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for how this all unfolds. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Denver, our parents always emphasized financial independence. No one will look after your future except you, my dad would remind us over dinner. My mother, a high school math teacher, taught us to budget from our very first allowance. These lessons stuck with me far more than they did with my younger brother Ryan. I started saving for a home down payment during my second year of college. While friends were spending weekends at parties or spring break destinations, I worked extra shifts at the campus bookstore and later as a barista. By 24, I had scraped together enough for a modest down payment on a 3-bedroom house in a developing neighborhood. The mortgage was steep for my entry-level accounting salary, but I was determined. For 12 years, I poured everything into that mortgage. I took on freelance bookkeeping clients on weekends. I rented out one bedroom to a carefully vetted roommate for the first 4 years. Vacations meant visiting friends where I could crash on their couches rather than paying for hotels. Date nights were home-cooked meals rather than restaurants. Every bonus, tax refund, and birthday check from my grandmother went straight to the principal. My house isn't extravagant by any means. It's a 1,800 square foot ranch-style home with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a small backyard where I've cultivated a garden. The neighborhood has grown around me, with coffee shops and family businesses replacing vacant lots. I've watched property values climb as I've meticulously maintained and gradually updated my home. The kitchen still has the original cabinets that I painstakingly refinished myself one summer. The maple tree I planted in the front yard when I first moved in now provides shade for the entire front of the house. Meanwhile, Ryan's financial journey took a different path. 2 years younger than me, he's always been charismatic and social, floating between jobs that initially excited him but quickly lost their appeal. He married Natalie 7 years ago after a whirlwind 6-month romance. Natalie works in pharmaceutical sales and has expensive taste that Ryan's inconsistent income can't support. They rent a luxury apartment downtown that costs nearly twice my mortgage payment. Their social media showcases weekend trips, designer purchases, and lavish dinner outings. I've never commented on their lifestyle choices, though I've worried privately about their apparent lack of savings or financial planning. Twice in the past 3 years, I've covered their rent when Ryan was between jobs. Last year, I lent them $3,000 for car repairs that they promised to repay within 6 months. I'm still waiting for that repayment, though I haven't pressed the issue. Family helps family, after all. The day I made my final mortgage payment, I scheduled a small celebration dinner with my closest friends, Karen and Michael, who have witnessed every step of my journey. Karen and I have been friends since college, and she's been my cheerleader through countless overtime shifts and budget reassessments. Michael, her husband, helped me install new bathroom fixtures last year when I couldn't afford a plumber. I spent the morning at the bank finalizing paperwork, still in disbelief that this day had actually arrived. The loan officer handed me the deed and congratulated me with a handshake that felt surreal. I drove home with the document on the passenger seat, glancing at it at every red light as if it might disappear. At home, I splurged on ingredients for a special dinner, steaks, fresh asparagus, and ingredients for a chocolate soufflé that I'd been practicing for weeks. I had just put a bottle of champagne to chill and was arranging a small display of my mortgage statements, from the first to the last, when my phone rang. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. I answered happily, eager to share my achievement with my brother. "Hey Cass," he said, his tone casual. "What are you up to this weekend?" "Natalie and I want to start coordinating the move." "What move?" I asked, absently arranging the papers on my dining table. our move to your place next month. Natalie wants to paint before we bring our furniture in. She's thinking a light gray for the living room. More modern, you know. The champagne bottle slipped from my hand, catching the edge of the counter before I fumbled it back into my grip. Ryan, what are you talking about? There was a pause, then a confused laugh. Didn't Natalie call you? We're moving in. Now that your house is paid off, there's plenty of room for all of us. No sense in us throwing money away on rent when there's family property available. And just like that, my celebration day transformed into something entirely different. Family property? I repeated, my voice sounding distant even to myself. Ryan, this is my house. I just spent 12 years paying off my mortgage. Well, yeah, Ryan replied with that same casual tone that was quickly grating on my nerves. But that's the thing, Cass. It's paid off now, and Natalie pointed out that you're single with no kids. There's no reason for you to have a whole house to yourself when family needs help. I sank into a kitchen chair, still clutching the champagne bottle. Did you and Natalie discuss this with me, and I somehow forgot an entire conversation? Natalie said she was going to call you, Ryan said, hesitation finally entering his voice. She didn't. No, Ryan. No one discussed anything with me about you moving into my house. Oh. The line went quiet for a moment. Well, we've been talking about it for a while. Our lease is up next month and rent keeps increasing. Natalie says it makes more sense to keep resources in the family. She's already told Mom and Dad and Aunt Linda. Everyone agrees it's the sensible solution. My stomach dropped. You've told the entire family that you're moving into my house without even asking me first? Don't be so dramatic, Cass. It's not the entire family, Ryan said with a nervous laugh. Look, we know you're super independent and everything, but that's a 3-bedroom house. You only need 1 room. Natalie and I can take the master bedroom, and we can use the 3rd bedroom as a home office. It works out perfectly. I stood up, pacing my kitchen in my house that I had sacrificed for, scraped for, and finally owned outright. Ryan, I need to be very clear. You and Natalie are not moving into my house. This isn't a discussion or negotiation. This is my property that I worked incredibly hard for. Wow, Ryan's voice hardened. That's really selfish, Cass. We're family. Family helps family, remember? You're always saying that. Helping family doesn't mean giving away my home. My voice rose despite my attempts to stay calm. Ryan, I've helped you financially multiple times. I've never asked for the money back. But my house is not up for grabs. Natalie's going to be really disappointed, Ryan said quietly. She already told her parents too. Everyone's excited about us living in the family home. It's not a family home, Ryan. It's my home. I was struggling to process how this had spiraled so quickly. Look, if you and Natalie need help finding an affordable place to rent, I'm happy to help with that. But you cannot move here. After I hung up, my phone immediately began buzzing with text messages. Aunt Linda asking if I was excited about the kids moving in. My cousin Jennifer saying how generous I was to share my blessing with Ryan. Even my mother sent a message saying she was proud of me for helping your brother get established. When Karen and Michael arrived for our celebration dinner, they found me sitting at my dining table surrounded by congratulatory messages. All praising me for a generosity I had never offered. They're acting like I won the lottery and am selfishly keeping it all, I explained after recounting the bizarre conversation with Ryan. Not like I worked 60-hour weeks for over a decade to pay for this house. Karen's expression had transformed from confusion to outrage. This is absolutely insane. They can't just declare your house community property. Michael, always the more diplomatic one, frowned thoughtfully. There must be some misunderstanding. Maybe Natalie mentioned it hypothetically, and Ryan took it as a plan. Even as a hypothetical, it's completely inappropriate, Karen insisted. Who looks at someone else's accomplishment and immediately thinks, great, now I can benefit from that? I pushed my untouched steak around my plate. I don't know how to handle this without causing a huge family rift. They've already told everyone as if it's a done deal. This isn't about you causing a rift, Karen said firmly. They created this situation, not you. Michael nodded in agreement. You need to address this directly and quickly, before they make more plans or tell more people. Would you feel comfortable having them over to discuss it in person? That night, instead of celebrating my mortgage milestone, we strategized how I would stand my ground while minimizing family fallout. Before they left, Karen insisted on opening the champagne anyway. "You still paid off your house today," she said, pouring 3 glasses. "That deserves recognition, regardless of whatever bizarre entitlement drama is unfolding." We clinked glasses, but the victory felt hollow now, overshadowed by the confrontation I knew was coming. 3 days later, I hosted what I optimistically called a family dinner, but what felt more like a preemptive intervention. I invited Ryan and Natalie, along with my parents, hoping their presence might keep the conversation rational. In retrospect, I should have known better. I spent the afternoon cooking my mother's favorite lasagna recipe, stress cleaning my house, and rehearsing calm but firm explanations of why Ryan and Natalie would not be moving in. I wanted to approach the situation with compassion. After all, housing costs were rising dramatically in our city, and financial pressure can make people behave uncharacteristically. Natalie arrived first, 20 minutes early, while I was still setting the table. Ryan texted that he would meet her there, coming directly from work. I should have recognized this as the strategic move it was. "Cassandra, the house looks lovely," Natalie said, air-kissing my cheek before immediately walking past me. She was dressed immaculately as always, her blonde hair in a perfect blowout, designer handbag dangling from her wrist. Without asking, she began walking through the house, surveying each room like a property appraiser. "The living room has potential, but these curtains will definitely need to go," she commented, fingering the blue drapes I had splurged on last year. "I'm thinking a more modern aesthetic. Clean lines, neutral palette." I followed her, increasingly uncomfortable as she moved from room to room, making similar assessments. When she entered my bedroom, she nodded approvingly at the space. "Perfect master suite. Though we'll need a king bed instead of your queen. Ryan sprawls when he sleeps." "Natalie," I said firmly, "I think we need to discuss some things before you continue planning redecorations." She turned to me with a practiced smile. "Of course. I'm just so excited about this arrangement. It's going to be wonderful having family all together. So much cozier than our soulless apartment building where we hardly know the neighbors." My parents arrived next, followed shortly by Ryan. As we gathered around the dining table, I noticed how my mother kept beaming at Ryan and Natalie, while my father seemed oddly reserved. I waited until everyone had been served before addressing the elephant in the room. "I wanted to have this dinner because there seems to be some confusion about my house that I need to clear up," I began carefully. "Ryan and Natalie, while I understand you're looking for more affordable housing, I'm not comfortable with the plan you've apparently made to move in here." Natalie's fork clattered against her plate. "Excuse me. This is my home," I continued. "I've spent 12 years paying for it, maintaining it, and making it mine. I'm not looking for housemates." "Housemates?" Natalie's voice rose dramatically. "We're family, Cassandra, not random strangers off Craigslist." Ryan looked uncomfortably between his wife and me. "Cass, we thought this would be a win-win. You have all this extra space, and we could contribute to utilities and groceries. But not to the mortgage or property taxes or insurance," I pointed out. "You don't have a mortgage anymore," Natalie said sharply. "That's the whole point." My mother interjected, her voice soothing. "Cassandra, honey, we raised you to value family. Your brother needs help right now." "Mom, I do value family. I've helped Ryan financially several times." I turned to my father, hoping for support. "Dad, you always taught us about working for what we have. Would you expect me to just hand over my house after everything I've done to pay it off?" My father cleared his throat. "No one's asking you to hand over your house, Cassandra." "Actually," Natalie interrupted, reaching for her designer handbag, "I've drawn up a fair compromise." She pulled out several printed pages. Since we'd be occupying 2/3 of the bedroom space, plus sharing all common areas, we thought a 50-50 ownership split would actually be quite generous. She slid the document across the table toward me. I stared at it in disbelief, not touching it. "You want me to sign over half of my house to you?" My voice was barely a whisper. "It would be a family home," Natalie explained with exaggerated patience. "We'd all benefit." You'd have company, help with maintenance, and we'd cover utility costs. The property would stay in the family long term. This is completely inappropriate, I said, finding my voice again. I'm not signing anything, and I'm not agreeing to any living arrangement I don't want in my own home. Natalie's expression shifted, her practiced smile faltering. I don't think you're considering the bigger picture. You're single, Cassandra. No husband, no children. What are you going to do with all this house? Meanwhile, Ryan and I want to start a family soon. We need the space, and frankly, we need the financial breathing room. My mother nodded sympathetically at Natalie while my father studied his lasagna with intense interest. My marital status and family planning are completely irrelevant, I said, struggling to keep my composure. This is my property, purchased with my money, maintained with my labor. Tears suddenly appeared in Natalie's eyes. I can't believe you're being so selfish. We're family. Family helps family. This isn't help, I insisted. This is you trying to claim something that isn't yours. We just assumed you'd want to support your brother, my mother said, her disappointment evident. Especially since you've been so blessed with financial stability. Blessed? I echoed incredulously. Mom, I worked overtime for 12 years. I haven't taken a real vacation in a decade. I sacrificed constantly to pay off this mortgage. That's not a blessing, that's the result of my choices and hard work. Ryan finally spoke up, his voice quiet. Cass, no one's saying you didn't work hard. But now that you've achieved this goal, why not use it to help the whole family? Because it's not a family achievement, it's my achievement. I looked around the table, feeling increasingly isolated. Would any of you give up your homes if I decided I wanted to move in? Silence fell over the table. Natalie dabbed at her eyes with a napkin while shooting me a look that, despite her tears, seemed calculating rather than hurt. I think we all need time to process, my father finally said, pushing his plate away. This is a big decision that affects everyone. No, Dad, I said firmly. This isn't a family decision. This is my house, and I've already made my decision. Ryan and Natalie will not be moving in. Natalie stood abruptly, gathering her papers. Family helps family, Cassandra. You need to decide if you're really part of this family. She walked out, leaving her untouched lasagna behind. The remainder of the dinner was painfully awkward. Ryan made apologetic noises while simultaneously suggesting I should sleep on it and consider the practical benefits. My mother expressed disappointment in my hardened heart, while my father remained conspicuously silent. After they left, I sat alone at my dining table, surrounded by half-eaten food and the lingering tension, wondering how my milestone achievement had so quickly transformed into a family crisis. Over the next week, Natalie launched what could only be described as a calculated pressure campaign. First came the passive-aggressive social media posts about disappointment in selfish family members and the lost art of family unity, never mentioning me by name, but unmistakable in their targeting. Then came the barrage of messages in our extended family group chat. Cousin Jennifer shared an article about generational housing being a growing trend. Aunt Linda reminisced about how her parents had taken in her brother's family during tough times in the 1980s. Uncle Paul posted about wealth hoarding and the importance of resource sharing. None mentioned me directly, but the implication was clear. I was failing some essential family obligation test. My mother called daily, each conversation beginning with pleasantries before inevitably circling to, "Have you reconsidered your brother's situation?" My father, surprisingly, called once to simply ask if I was doing okay, offering no opinions or pressure, which I appreciated more than he knew. Ryan texted sporadically, his messages a strange mix of apology and continued expectation. Sorry about how dinner went down. Natalie was just emotional. But when you've had time to think, maybe we can discuss a revised timeline for the move. I maintained my position firmly, but politely in each interaction, though the constant defense was exhausting. Karen checked in regularly, providing much-needed reality checks when I began to question whether I was indeed being unreasonable. 10 days after the disastrous family dinner, I was working from home when I heard vehicles pulling up outside. Glancing out my home office window, I froze at the sight. A moving truck accompanied by 2 SUVs parked at the curb. Natalie emerged from one SUV, directing two young men who began unloading furniture from the truck. Ryan was nowhere to be seen. I rushed outside, still clutching my coffee mug, heart pounding. "What is happening here?" I demanded. Natalie turned with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Moving day. We brought help. My cousins Jake and Tyler are off from college, and my parents are bringing another load in their SUV." Aunt Linda emerged from the second SUV along with my mother. Both women waved cheerfully as if this were a planned family gathering rather than an ambush. "Stop," I said, stepping between Natalie and my front walk. "No one is moving anything into my house." "Cassandra," my mother began in her placating teacher voice, "we thought after you had some time to reflect." "Where's Ryan?" I interrupted, scanning the vehicles again. "Working," Natalie replied smoothly. "He couldn't get the day off, but he'll be by this evening. We figured we'd get the heavy lifting done as a surprise for him." The young men had already removed a coffee table from the truck and were looking uncertainly between Natalie and me. "Put that back right now," I said firmly. "There is no move happening today or any day. I've been abundantly clear about this." My neighbor Diane had emerged from her house across the street, clearly noting the developing situation. Another neighbor was walking his dog more slowly than usual, watching with undisguised interest. Natalie's smile tightened. "Let's not create a scene, Cassandra. Why don't we go inside and discuss this privately while the boys start bringing in the essentials?" Something in me snapped. The accumulated stress, the constant undermining, the utter disregard for my boundaries, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. "No, Natalie. We're not discussing anything. This is my house. I paid for it. I own it. I alone decide who lives here, and I have repeatedly told you that you and Ryan will not be moving in. The fact that you've shown up with a moving truck after I've said no multiple times shows an astounding level of disrespect." Natalie's facade finally cracked. "Disrespect? You want to talk about disrespect? How about hoarding a 3-bedroom house while your own brother struggles to make rent? How about thinking only of yourself when you could easily help family? That's the real disrespect." "I earned this house," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Every square foot, every brick, every shingle. I worked overtime for years. I budgeted every penny. I sacrificed constantly. And I did it so I would have security and independence, not so I could hand it over to someone who feels entitled to the fruits of my labor." My mother stepped forward, distress evident on her face. "Girls, please." The neighbors. Indeed, more neighbors had appeared. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door stood on her porch watching openly. Across the street, someone appeared to be recording with their phone. "I don't care who's watching," I said, beyond concern for appearances. "In fact, I'm glad there are witnesses. Because I need everyone here to understand that if you attempt to move a single item into my home without my permission, I will call the police and report you for trespassing." Natalie gasped dramatically. "You would call the police on family? What kind of person does that?" "The kind who respects herself enough to enforce boundaries," I replied. "The kind who worked too hard for too long to let anyone take advantage of her." Just then, Ryan's car pulled into the street. He parked hurriedly and jogged up to our growing spectacle, confusion evident on his face. "What's going on?" "I thought we were moving this weekend." He looked between Natalie and me. "You're not moving at all, Ryan," I said. "Not into my house. Not today, not this weekend, not ever." I've been saying this for weeks, but apparently no one has been listening. Ryan's eyes widened as he took in the scene, the moving truck, the gathered neighbors, Natalie's flushed face, and my unwavering stance. "Natalie said you'd changed your mind," he said slowly. "She said you called her yesterday and agreed to a trial period." I laughed without humor. "That is completely false. I've never said any such thing." Natalie shot Ryan a warning look. "She's just getting cold feet now that it's actually happening. Once we're settled in, she'll see how well this works for everyone." "No, Ryan," I said, meeting my brother's eyes directly. "This isn't happening. Not now, not ever. I need you to respect that this is my home and my decision." Something shifted in Ryan's expression, perhaps the first real recognition of the situation's gravity. He looked at Natalie with new understanding, then back to me. "Guys, put the furniture back," he called to the young men by the truck. "There's been a misunderstanding." "Ryan," Natalie hissed. "Don't let her manipulate you like this." "The only manipulation happening here is yours," I said, feeling a strange calm now that everything was out in the open. "You've lied to Ryan, lied to the family, and tried to pressure me into giving up my home. It stops now." I turned to address everyone present. "I want to be perfectly clear. No one is moving into my house. If you continue to push this issue, I will take legal action. I suggest you all leave now." My mother looked torn between embarrassment and disappointment. Aunt Linda muttered something about family loyalty as she retreated to her SUV. The young men quickly reloaded the coffee table and looked to Natalie for further instructions. Natalie's mask fully slipped, her expression contorting with anger. "You think you're so special with your perfect little house and your perfect little life. You know what everyone says about you? Poor lonely Cassandra, married to her job, no man, no kids, nothing but an empty house. You'll regret this selfishness when you're old and alone with no one to care for you." Ryan grabbed Natalie's arm. "That's enough. Stop it right now." The raw venom in her words stung, but also confirmed everything I'd suspected about her true feelings toward me. I maintained my position, arms crossed, as Natalie stormed to her SUV and slammed the door. Ryan lingered, conflict evident on his face. "Cass, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was doing this today. I thought we were still discussing options." "There are no options to discuss, Ryan," I said, suddenly exhausted. "This is my house. That's the beginning and end of the discussion." He nodded slowly. "I understand. We'll figure something else out." As the vehicles finally pulled away, I became acutely aware of the audience we'd attracted. Mrs. Rodriguez gave me a subtle thumbs up from her porch. Diane crossed the street to ask if I needed anything. The neighbor with the dog nodded respectfully as he finally continued his walk. I returned to my house, closed the door, and for the first time since this ordeal began, allowed myself to cry, from stress, from anger, from the painful realization that some family ties were perhaps irreparably damaged. But beneath the tears was something stronger, the certainty that I had done the right thing in standing my ground. Once the moving trucks departed and the neighbors returned to their homes, the full weight of the confrontation crashed over me. I collapsed onto my couch, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. What should have been weeks of celebration over my hard-won financial freedom had instead become a battlefield of family expectations and boundaries. My phone buzzed incessantly, messages from family members who had already received Natalie's version of events, no doubt painting me as the villain who had cruelly turned away family in need. I silenced notifications and called the one person I knew would provide rational perspective. "I need a lawyer," I told Karen after recounting the moving truck ambush. "This has gone beyond family drama into something I need legal protection from." The next morning, I met with Angela Torres, a property attorney Karen had worked with previously. Angela listened to my situation without judgment, taking careful notes. "Unfortunately, this type of family entitlement scenario is more common than you might think," she said. "Especially when someone achieves financial milestones like paying off a mortgage. I just can't believe they actually showed up with a moving truck after I repeatedly said no," I said, still processing the audacity. "People hear what they want to hear," Angela replied. "The good news is that legally, this is straightforward. You own the property outright. You have no obligation to house family members. The concerning part is their persistent boundary violations. We drafted a formal cease and desist letter, carefully worded to be firm but not unnecessarily antagonistic. Angela advised documenting any further attempts to pressure me or enter my property without permission. She also suggested changing my locks and considering a simple security system, steps that made the situation feel even more surreal. "It's not that I think Ryan would break in," I explained, feeling a need to defend my brother despite everything. "But Natalie has shown she doesn't respect my boundaries at all." "Better safe than sorry," Angela counseled. Family conflicts can escalate in unpredictable ways. The fallout rippled through the family immediately. Ryan called the evening after receiving the cease and desist letter, his voice a mixture of embarrassment and defensiveness. "A lawyer, Cass? Really? Was that necessary? After you and Natalie showed up with a moving truck against my explicit wishes? Yes, it was necessary, I responded, trying to keep my voice even. I needed to make my boundaries absolutely clear. Natalie's really upset. She says you've humiliated her in front of her family. Ryan, I'm not going to apologize for protecting my home from someone who tried to claim it as her own. The conversation ended awkwardly, with no real resolution. Similar uncomfortable exchanges followed with other family members. Aunt Linda expressed disappointment in my litigious approach to family matters. My father remained conspicuously neutral, while my mother veered between guilt-inducing concern, "We're just worried about your brother's situation," and passive-aggressive disappointment. "I just never raised you to be so untrusting of family." A week after the moving truck incident, my mother invited me to lunch. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes, the kind of neutral territory that seemed appropriate for the diplomatic discussion ahead. "I need to understand your perspective," she began after we'd ordered. "Your father and I are caught in the middle here, and it's creating a very difficult situation." For the first time, I didn't rush to explain or defend myself. Instead, I asked, "Mom, what would you have done if Aunt Linda had shown up at your house with a moving truck after you told her she couldn't move in?" My mother blinked, momentarily thrown by the role reversal. "Well, that's different. Your aunt has her own home. But if she didn't? If she decided your house would better suit her needs, would you have given it to her?" "Of course not, but..." "Then why did you expect me to give mine to Ryan and Natalie?" My mother stirred her tea thoughtfully. "I suppose we've always seen you as the strong one, the independent one. Ryan has always struggled more, needed more help. And I've helped him, Mom. Repeatedly. But there's a difference between helping someone and sacrificing everything I've worked for." As our conversation progressed, I learned something that shed new light on Natalie's aggressive campaign. Apparently, she had already promised Ryan's teenage children from his previous marriage that they could have their own rooms in my house. She'd shown them photos of my spare bedrooms, letting them pick which would be theirs. The kids had already told friends about their upcoming move to a real house with a yard. She put those children in the middle of this? I was appalled. That's manipulative on a whole new level. My mother sighed. "I think she truly believed you would eventually agree. Or perhaps she thought presenting it as a done deal would make it harder for you to refuse." "It doesn't make me wrong for refusing," I said firmly. "It makes her wrong for promising something that wasn't hers to give." That evening, I had my regular video session with Dr. Bennett, the therapist I'd been seeing since the initial confrontation. I'd originally hesitated to bring such a seemingly straightforward situation to therapy, but the persistent guilt and family pressure had made me question my own judgment. "I keep asking myself if I'm being selfish," I admitted. "My house is bigger than I strictly need. Ryan is family. Am I wrong for wanting to keep my space to myself?" Dr. Bennett adjusted her glasses thoughtfully. "Cassandra, there's an important distinction between generosity and being taken advantage of. Generosity comes from a place of free choice and genuine desire to help. What your brother and sister-in-law attempted was to override your choice and force their will upon you. But family helps family," I echoed the phrase that had been weaponized against me. "Yes, and you've demonstrated that value repeatedly through financial assistance when your brother needed it. But help has limits, and those limits are yours to define, not anyone else's." We explored the deeper roots of my guilt, the family dynamic that had always cast Ryan as the one needing support and me as the one strong enough to provide it. The cultural expectations around shared family resources. The subtle but persistent gender expectation that as a single woman, my needs were somehow less legitimate than those of a married couple. "Your house represents more than just property," Dr. Bennett observed. "It's tangible proof of your values, discipline, independence, long-term planning." When they attempted to claim it, they were dismissing those values and the work that went into realizing them. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt fully validated in my stance. I wasn't being selfish, I was honoring my own life choices and protecting what I had rightfully earned. 2 weeks after the moving truck confrontation, Ryan texted asking if we could talk, just the two of us. I agreed, suggesting a walk in the neutral territory of the park near my neighborhood. The distance from both our homes felt symbolic of the space this conflict had created between us. Ryan was already waiting on a bench when I arrived, looking more disheveled than usual. His normally carefully styled hair was unstyled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," he said as I sat beside him. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." We walked along the park's perimeter trail, the autumn leaves crunching beneath our feet. For several minutes, we moved in silence, the physical activity somehow making the conversation easier. "I owe you an apology," Ryan finally said. "A real one, not the half apologies I've been giving. What Natalie and I tried to do was wrong. We had no right to claim your house or make plans involving your property without your consent." The straightforward acknowledgement caught me by surprise. "Thank you for saying that. It took me too long to see what was happening," he continued. "Natalie can be very persuasive. She has this way of presenting ideas that makes them seem inevitable, like the decision has already been made and questioning it would be unreasonable." I nodded, recognizing the dynamic I'd witnessed. "That doesn't excuse your part in it, though." "No, it doesn't," Ryan agreed. "I should have stood up to her when she first suggested it. I should have shut down the idea immediately because it was inappropriate. Instead, I went along with it because it seemed like an easy solution to our problems." "What problems exactly?" I asked. "Your apartment always seemed nice whenever I visited." Ryan sighed heavily. "We're in serious financial trouble, Cass. The apartment is way more than we can afford, but Natalie refuses to downsize. She keeps up appearances with designer clothes and expensive dinners, but we're drowning in credit card debt. I've been trying to get her to see a financial counselor for months, but she says it's an income problem, not a spending problem." The confession explained much of their desperate grab for my house, not just as shelter, but as a financial life raft. "Why didn't you just tell me how bad things were?" I asked. "I might have helped in other ways. Pride, I guess. And Natalie. She doesn't like to admit when things aren't perfect." Ryan kicked at a pile of leaves. "But there's something else you should know. Something that made me finally see how wrong this whole situation was." He stopped walking and turned to face me directly. "Natalie has been telling people the house would eventually be ours anyway, since you're single and have no children. She said it made more sense for us to inherit it now while we need it rather than waiting until you're gone." The casual cruelty of this calculation left me momentarily speechless. She was planning my inheritance while I'm still in my 30s? Ryan nodded miserably. When I overheard her saying this to her mother on the phone, it finally clicked how entitled this whole plan was. We weren't just asking for help. We were trying to take something that wasn't ours on the assumption that we had some future claim to it. We continued walking, processing this revelation. Part of me was deeply hurt by this calculated view of my life and property, but another part felt vindicated in my instinctive resistance to their plan. "What happens now?" I finally asked. "With your financial situation?" "I found a smaller apartment across town. Not as trendy a neighborhood, but much more affordable. Natalie's not happy about it, but after the moving truck disaster, she doesn't have much leverage to argue." "And between you and me?" Ryan stopped again, his expression earnest. "I want to rebuild your trust, Cass. I know it won't happen overnight, but you're my sister and I don't want to lose our relationship over this. I'm going to start by paying back the money you lent us for the car repairs, with interest." "And Natalie?" He sighed. "She's agreed to couples counseling. This situation has exposed some serious issues in how we communicate and make decisions. I don't know if she'll ever admit she was wrong about the house, but I'm setting clearer boundaries with her about my relationship with you." I appreciated his honesty and the effort it clearly took to have this conversation. While the hurt wasn't magically erased, it felt like the first step toward healing. "I can't offer you my house," I said carefully, "but I can help in other ways. I know some good financial counselors who could help you create a sustainable budget. And I'm willing to help you research first-time homebuyer programs when you're ready for that step." Ryan's eyes brightened with genuine appreciation. "That would be amazing, Cass. Real help toward independence rather than a temporary bailout." As we circled back toward the park entrance, our conversation shifted to more practical matters: resources for financial planning, strategies for communicating about money with Natalie, steps toward rebuilding our sibling relationship. A week later, I hosted a small dinner party that I mentally dubbed my Reclaiming My Space celebration. Karen and Michael came, along with Mrs. Rodriguez from next door and Diane from across the street, neighbors who had become unexpected allies during the moving truck confrontation. My father came too, bringing a bottle of champagne and a quiet apology for not speaking up more firmly during the conflict. I didn't want to take sides, he explained as we stood in my kitchen. But my silence probably felt like I was taking their side, and that wasn't fair to you. After dinner, Michael helped me install a new smart lock system on my doors, not because I truly feared intrusion, but because the symbolic act of changing the locks helped me reclaim my sense of security in my own home. The system allowed me to grant temporary access codes to trusted visitors, a feature that felt appropriately representative of my new approach to boundaries. Access was mine to grant, not others to demand. That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked through each room of my house with new appreciation. This space represented not just financial achievement, but a testament to my values, choices, and personal journey. For the first time since paying off the mortgage, I felt the true freedom of owning my home, not just financially, but emotionally as well. 6 months passed, bringing spring to my garden and a new equilibrium to our family dynamics. The immediate crisis had resolved, but the ripple effects continued to shape our relationships in subtle ways. Ryan and Natalie remained in counseling with mixed results. According to Ryan's occasional updates, Natalie still maintained that I had overreacted to their reasonable proposal, but she had at least stopped actively campaigning against me in family conversations. They were making slow progress on their financial situation, with Ryan taking a more active role in their budget and Natalie reluctantly reducing some discretionary spending. My relationship with Ryan had cautiously improved. We'd returned to our monthly lunch tradition, though we met at restaurants rather than at either of our homes, neutral territory that felt appropriate for our healing but still fragile connection. He had repaid the car repair loan as promised and never asked for financial help since the confrontation, though I occasionally noticed him struggling not to comment on what he still perceived as my extra space. Some family relationships remain strained. Aunt Linda continued to make occasional passive-aggressive comments about family loyalty, while Cousin Jennifer seemed unable to meet my eyes at family gatherings. My mother had eventually come around to a more supportive position, especially after witnessing Natalie's continuing sense of entitlement at a recent family birthday celebration. "I see it now," she confided during a shopping trip. "It wasn't about family helping family. It was about taking advantage of your success." My father, interestingly, had become more openly supportive than ever before. He'd started sending me articles about women and financial independence, and recently asked if I would speak to a community college class he taught about long-term financial planning. "Your story has real value," he told me, "especially for young women who might not see examples of financial independence in their immediate circles." This external validation helped heal some of the hurt from the family conflict, but the more meaningful growth happened internally. The ordeal had forced me to clarify my values and strengthen my boundaries in all areas of my life. I'd always been someone who worked hard and helped others, often at my own expense. The house confrontation had exposed the dangers of being the reliable one, the strong one, the one who could always be counted on to sacrifice. I began practicing saying no to requests that didn't align with my priorities, not just from family but in my professional life as well. At work, I declined an opportunity to take on an additional project without compensation. With friends, I became more honest about my availability rather than automatically rearranging my schedule to accommodate everyone else's needs. These small acts of self-advocacy felt revolutionary after years of being the dependable one who never complained. The experience also inspired me to be more intentional about my financial goals. Having achieved the milestone of homeownership, I established a new objective, creating a small scholarship fund for young people seeking financial independence. I started with a modest annual contribution to a local community college, specifically targeting students who were working while pursuing their education. I also began volunteering monthly at a financial literacy workshop for women. When appropriate, I shared elements of my own story. Not to demonize my family, but to illustrate the importance of maintaining boundaries even with loved ones when it came to financial matters. There's a difference between generosity and allowing yourself to be taken advantage of, I would explain to the participants. True generosity comes from choice, not obligation or manipulation. On a more personal level, I finally allowed myself to fully enjoy my home without lingering guilt. I converted the third bedroom, the one Natalie had planned to use as their home office, into a reading room and personal sanctuary. I installed floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, added a comfortable reading chair by the window overlooking my garden, and splurged on the artwork I'd been admiring for years, but had always considered an unnecessary expense. This space became my physical reminder that taking care of myself wasn't selfish but essential. Each time I entered the room, I was reinforcing the value of my own needs and choices. My experience had also given me a deeper, more nuanced understanding of family relationships. I still valued family connection deeply, but I no longer confused unconditional love with unlimited access or obligation. I could love my brother while maintaining firm boundaries about my property and resources. I could care about his well-being without taking responsibility for his financial choices. As spring turned to summer, I hosted a garden party to celebrate 1 year of mortgage freedom. This time, the guest list was carefully curated to include only those who had supported me through the difficult months: Karen and Michael, my father, a few close friends from work, and the neighbors who had witnessed and validated my stand against the moving truck invasion. As we enjoyed drinks on my patio overlooking the flourishing garden beds I'd had more time to tend since redirecting my mortgage payment energy, Karen raised her glass in a toast to Cassandra, who not only built a beautiful home but had the courage to protect it. Your strength inspires all of us. The genuine warmth and appreciation in the faces around me felt like the true culmination of my journey, not just to homeownership, but to authentic self-advocacy and healthy boundaries. Later that evening, as the party wound down and twilight settled over my yard, my father lingered to help clean up. "I'm proud of you, Cassandra," he said, uncharacteristically emotional. "Not just for paying off your mortgage or standing your ground, but for the grace with which you've handled everything after. You've maintained your compassion without compromising your boundaries. That's true strength." His words touched me deeply, validating not just my financial achievement, but the personal growth that had emerged from the conflict. The truth I had discovered through this challenging year was that protecting what you've earned isn't selfish, it's an act of self-respect. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary for healthy relationships. And most importantly, being part of a family doesn't mean sacrificing your independence or allowing others to claim what you've worked for. My house stands as testament to these truths. Each room represents not just my financial investment, but my emotional and spiritual growth as well. It is my sanctuary, my achievement, and my choice to share or not share as I see fit. I often think about how differently things might have unfolded had I given in to the pressure and guilt. Where would the boundaries have ended? What other aspects of my life would have been claimed as family property? By standing firm in that pivotal moment, I not only protected my home, but set the tone for all my relationships going forward. Have you ever had to defend your boundaries against family expectations? How did you balance your own needs with family obligations? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need encouragement in setting their own boundaries. Remember, protecting what you've worked for isn't selfish, it's essential self-care. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in your own path toward both financial and emotional freedom.